everybody, hey, how's it going out there? Well, let's continue on our... Wait, hold on, I have something in my ear. Hey, it's my first question! I have a question! Oh my god! This is great! I love answering questions. Oh, so what's the question? Okay, so on my MFF flight, or talking about my first flight to MFF and stuff like that, video, which you can see on that information link up there. They had a comment from a Muffin Man? The Muffin Man? No, MapleMuffin. MapleMuffin. And they asked, do TSA agents at the airport question people with fursuits in their case frequently? So I'm going to put a big old asterisk right here for it now. I've only had one experience with going on an airplane, and it was this past MFF. And so I've only had one experience bringing a quote-unquote fursuit with me onto the plane. That being said, you know, I do have access to a lot of people's Twitters, and I do get responses a lot about things that happen and whatnot. So I can kind of provide sort of a somewhat answer-ish, but also talk about traveling in general. So basically how it works like this, if you've never had experience flying, there's two kinds of bags that you can have. There's two. You can have a checked bag, or you can have a carry-on bag. Some flights allow you to have two carry-on bags. There's different varied rules. Obviously, you need to read up on your rules before you go. Measurements, very important. Be sure to measure your things before you get on the planes, etc., etc. So when you follow those rules, and basically the one I had two carry-ons. You can bring out your luggage, and you can bring like a sort of a laptop bag, sort of a thing. So basically what I did was I put my clothes, most of my wearing clothes, my street clothes, into the larger carry-on, and my smaller carry-on, I had put like a slicker brush, a snack box, like on the way out, and my art would come with me back on the way back, and not much else. So I had all that. But then there's the other one, and that's the carry-on stuff. As you'll find out later, is the stuff that they do more security checks on. Is the things that they're going to run through the machine. You know, they'll be more secure about checking what's in those bags and maybe asking questions about what's in those bags. The other form is the checked bag. The checked bag, usually when you're putting your ticket in and stuff like that, they'll weigh your checked bag to make sure it's within weight and stuff like that. Then they'll either tell you to put it somewhere so that it goes to the people who are properly. This is before you even reach security, or they will take it themselves and put it out back. So basically, the checked bag is you don't interact with the bag from the time you check in really to the time you get off the flight. It basically just follows you around. If you have connecting flights, which is basically going from one airport to another airport to another airport, your checked bag will follow you underneath the plane, and you don't have to worry about it at all. Checked bags have the thing of being able to be larger. You could make them bigger, but obviously there's limits and stuff like that with weight and stuff like that. When they start charging you more, as I say, read the terms before you get to the airport. Do your research. But I put my main suit, into the checked bag. The full suit, the tail, the head, the tail, the head, the paws, and the feet, and that's all there is to my suit because it's a partial. So, but even with it just being a partial, it fit that whole bag. Like that whole, it was like a 29 by 15 by 6 bag, I think it was. I don't know. I can't remember the dimensions exactly, but it fit the whole checked luggage. It is actually the one that's in the picture in front of that video about traveling to MFF. That's the actual checked bag that I used. That being said, they don't really question those that much. And the reason they don't question those that much is because you can't interact with that bag while it's on the plane. Unless you somehow manage to get under the plane. Which if you do, which you ain't going to be able to do that without them going, you ain't supposed to be down there. You're not supposed to be down in the luggage area. Get the heck out of here. We're gonna lock you up. So yeah, no, they do obviously have rules about what gets on checked luggage as well, like no weapons, no explosive kind of explosives, like no like flammable substances and stuff like that. There are rules to what you can put in your checked bag as well. They're a little more lenient than your carry-ons though. So, that being said, the long and the short is, the only thing I ever got questioned about by the TSA was the Nature Valley granola bar box that I could put on my carry-on bag. I didn't get questioned on it, but they basically took it out and they swiped it with a chemical brush to determine whether or not it had, weapons or any explosive devices in it. Which was kind of humorous to me, because I thought it was because I had the slicker brush in that same bag, and I thought that was the reason that they were pulling it aside, and it's like, nope, it's because of the Nature Valley granola bars. Nature Valley, how could you? How dare you? You're suspicious. But yeah, the reason I brought that with me mostly was because I was used to the train. So the first time I ever took the train, I was like, I have no food or no water, and I have to pay out the ears in order to get food and water. And for this 13-hour slog. But they don't really have as much security checks on that, knock on wood. So if you have a carry-on, they're very not there's not a big old security checkpoint you have to go through or anything like that. Because obviously the tracks the train's kind of on rails. You can't do too much damage as far as nefarious individuals go. As I said, knock on wood, Hail Marys. But basically, so you can bring water with you. You can't really bring water with you on a plane because you can't have liquids that are more than 3 ounces. You can't have more than 3 ounces of any liquid. So in essence, the plane is obligated, the people on the flight are obligated to give you a snack food and water or a beverage while you're taking your flight, no matter how long it is. So most flights will offer a snack and a liquid of some degree because you can't really bring your own on board. You can, but it seems kind of weird. I could have, I guess, snacked on my granola bars, but I didn't have to because they had snack foods on there, and I didn't know that. So that's one thing that is good to know. But back on the topic at hand. Does the TSA ever question about fursuits? What I witnessed, at least through my first go around, is that the TSA won't even know about fursuits on your exit flight. And the reason they won't know about them on your exit flight is because we're more sporadic, and this is kind of a logistics thing. When we're going into a convention, we're spread out all over in different cities. Our starting flights are all over the place. We have Southern California, we have the JFK, we have the Hancock Airport, which is the one I left on because I'm from Syracuse. We have all these different ones. We have all these different airplanes and airports that we start from. And then we eventually fly into the last one, which for MFF would be the O'Hare Airport. So we arrive at the same airport. They don't really check your luggage on the way out because they don't really care at that point. They only check it on the way in. So on our leaving flights, we have all these security checks going on our way out, but they're sporadic. They're spread out. The other way, though, when we're leaving the convention, if you leave the convention on late Sunday or during Monday at any time, basically the Monday after a convention, which is when we left, you're going to start to hear people go, what's with the costumes? And, they're not going to ask you directly, but they're just going to be asking their colleagues. There's going to be you can tell that they're seeing that there's a pattern here, because all these furries that attended this one convention are now using the same airport to leave and go back home, and to once again spread out. So it's kind of like a fireworks. It goes the airport is like the epicenter of a furry explosion that goes out. And those are just the people who are flying out. Like there's people who drive, there's people who take a train, obviously, like I did for a few years. So But they start to see that pattern, and they go. So they'll ask us what's with the costumes, or if they are familiar with the bag, it's like, oh, this is one of these other furry costumes. Now, none of those questions were ever directed at me because, as I said, I put mine in my checked on. So they only like the machine would see what's in there, and maybe they would check it. I also put a little note in my checked on in case they ever did open it for whatever reason, and I put a note that said like, "Thank you for your thankless work. Stay safe. Tantru." So basically, I made like a little like paper note and I put it in there because if they're gonna, for one, it's called a nicety because I've worked in the service industry. I know how thankless it can be. Heck, we even have a parody. We even have a little joking video from a Bucktown Tiger about the TSA back when they started to become more heavy-handed after 9/11. Kind of a parody sort of video. And I think he means well, and it's kind of a funny video. But, there are some other individuals out there, such as like famously Penn from Penn and Teller. Basically, like, is very, anti-search, like, and I heard that he was very mean, like, because I knew a furry who worked at an airport and had an interaction with, and it worked as sort of a security person, and had a dealings with Penn that was very sour, let's just say. So dealing with these kind of situations can be very personal, and people can get very angry a lot, especially if you do things wrong. So I decided, knowing that, having been a cashier for like 5 years of my life, I know how people can be. So I decided put a note in there saying that there are people out there who appreciate what they do, even though many people can't appreciate it. But at the same time, there's another reason you'd want to do something like that, is because they have full control over your fursuit at that time. You're not going to see whether or not what they're doing with it. So I'm like, okay, if I be nice to them, maybe they'll put it back in one piece. You know what I mean? They won't like shove it in there and just kind of like crush the head or do anything like that. They'll put it back kind of the way it was, just by showing appreciation and being thankful. And so I don't know whether or not it was opened or not, which means that they did their job properly. Because I don't know whether or not my carry-on was ever, or not my carry-on, my check bag was ever opened or not, which means that they did their job properly, which is great. But yeah, that being said, when you're leaving, you're gonna hear people talk about it. And Kyle Gold also had his Twitter feed also kind of said, that suspicion. It's like that he overheard security people talking about all the fursuits and all the costumes. Like, what's with all the costumes? When I walked up to the TSA agent who was basically checking my boarding pass, I think someone behind me was using a head as a carry-on. Some people will do a head as a carry-on because they're worried they'll get crushed in their check bag. The check bag got pretty tight, and this thing has a little bit of give to it, so I was like, as long as I snug it next to the tail, it should be fine. But some people's heads are like really sensitive to crushing, so you got to be careful if you're putting that in a check bag. Also, if you're going to buy a check bag, make sure that it's got a solid sort of outing. There are some carry-on bags that basically are not carry-on, checked. I keep seeing this, 2 C words. So check baggage, like when you're doing a Google search for buying checked luggage, use the word checked luggage, and usually you'll find the bigger ones that will work that way. But also like look for a solid casing, because if you use, like, there are certain check bags that you have soft casing, and if you have soft casing, then if they stick your bag underneath someone else's bag, it's going to have some give to it, and it could crush some stuff. So have a solid casing of some sort. But also be careful if you're doing solid casing that you have enough room inside too. So you don't want it so solid that it's like armor and it's preventing you from putting stuff in it. But you also don't want something that's so givey that it would be crushed if it's underneath anyone else's stuff. So those are 2 things to keep in mind. But anyways, that was a long rambling thing about travel. So I'm guessing this is going to be a general travel question sort of a thing. But as far as like TSA really bothering people about it, I'm sure there's worse things that they have to deal with from time to time. So having furry costumes be a thing, I don't think is really on their radar. I don't think they'll ever step aside and ask you questions about it. Here's the thing. This was my first time through a TSA checkpoint, and of course there's always that thing in the back of your mind. It's like, what if I'm acting so stupid that they're going to pull me aside and go, you're acting stupid? But here's the thing about being at a job like this at an airport and stuff like that. They run into first-timers all the time. So as long as you're not giving them grief about, making mistakes and just kind of trying to follow up and follow directions, they're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna go, because every time they have to bother someone, it's time that it's like they gotta get through hundreds of people to get on these planes. They really don't have time to go look at this one guy who's just being just acting like a first timer and pulling him aside. If you don't follow directions, then they're going to start getting suspicious. So as long as you follow directions, I don't think you're going to ever get questioned on your fursuit. Now, if anyone has out there, feel free to comment about your experience on that, because I'm just one guy, as I said, who has one experience. But in general, if you plan things out, put your fursuit in your checked luggage. There's less likely to be questions about things like that. Even if you put, maybe your hand paws in your carry-on or something like that, you may get a question about it, but, that's not something you should feel free to obligate it. But if you do, just say furry or something like that. It's a costume, for a convention. Just be honest and open with it. You're not going to know this TSA agent, and they're probably not going to know you personally, so, just be as open, as honest as you can. Don't try to be, even if you feel like you should be discomforted, don't be, just answer questions and just kind of be normal-ish about it. Normal-ish as you possibly can be. There's the only horror story I remember in the furry fandom dealing with sort of security going overseas and stuff like that had to do more with immigration more than TSA, and that's another story, and that's someone else's personal story, really, and it's a really heartbreaking one. But it came out okay in the end. It was just kind of a really weird one where, somebody was being, when I recall, and I won't say their names, is like someone lived in the UK and they had their husband try to move in with them, and they were trying to get married over there, and their husband got held up by immigration security for like a day, a full-on day, and it was a really unpleasant experience. But other than that, that's the only story I recall ever hearing in the fandom about issues with traveling and stuff like that. But anyways, thank you for listening to this Roo ramble and answer a question, kind of, but also ramble. So kick the likes, kick the subscribes, kick a comment in there. Kick another question in there. I will spend another freaking 20 minutes answering a simple question and talking your ear off. Luckily, mine are big and they're attached to my head, so I'm fine. But thank you very much for watching. It's very much appreciated. Comments are very much appreciated. I'm liking that there's more comments, even if there's not more views. I like people talking on my comment sections, and I very much appreciate the conversations and the things. I read them all. Maybe this channel will be big enough one day where I won't be able to read them all, but I'll pretend like I'm reading them all, just as like Gabe Newell pretends. He says, I do read everything that you write to me. It's like, if you do, then my God, man, you probably have so much fan mail that you can't be telling the truth on that. Somebody reads it and then decides whether or not you should read it. I don't know how people like that do it, but once again, rambling. I gotta get out of here. The cops are gonna. They heard me talking about the TSA. Oh crap. Probably nothing. Thanks. Have a good one.